For literally thousands of years, there's this one question that just keeps popping up. It sparked expeditions, fueled endless debates, and totally captured our imagination. And that question is, where on earth was the Garden of Eden? It's this incredible, enduring mystery, a hunt for a paradise that we supposedly lost.
So let's put on our detective hats for a minute, because that's really what this is. We're talking about the world's oldest cold case. Seriously, think about it. The crime scene is paradise itself. And the missing persons report, well, that's for basically all of us. Our number one piece of evidence is this ancient text. But here's the kicker. The landscape it's describing has changed so much over the centuries. It's almost unrecognizable. And that brings us to the big question, right? The book of Genesis seems to lay out a map. It gives us geographical clues. But can we actually still follow it? I mean, after thousands of years of floods, crazy climate shifts, entire civilizations rising and falling, are those directions still any good? Well, let's find out. Okay, so first up, we've got to look at the original blueprint. Our investigation has to start with that primary piece of evidence, the geographical description we get in the book of Genesis. I mean, this is the foundation for pretty much every theory that comes after. So here it is, the foundational clue. Genesis says a single river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it split into 4 separate rivers. That's it. That's the key. This 4-river system is the X that marks the spot. If you can figure out where those 4 rivers once met, well, you found the garden. Simple, right?
All right, let's get our leads up on the evidence board. We've got 4 rivers to track down. Now, 2 of them are pretty much a slam dunk. The Hittite, everyone's pretty sure that's the Tigris. And the Euphrates is the Euphrates, so no mystery there. But this is where the real detective work kicks in. We've got the Pishon, which is supposed to flow through some land full of good gold. And then there's the Gihon, which winds through the land of Cush, a name that's a bit tricky since it's been linked to places in both Africa and Mesopotamia. These are our missing links.
Okay, so our first major theory comes from a researcher named Juris Zarins, and he took a really modern approach to this ancient puzzle. He didn't just pore over old texts. Nope. He used technology to see what the Earth itself had to say. And his theory? It takes us somewhere you'd probably never expect. Underwater. See, Zarins started by noticing something pretty fascinating. The Eden story sounds a lot like the much older Sumerian myth of Dilmun. We're talking a paradise with no sickness, man being made from clay, even a serpent playing a key role. The parallels are striking. So he thought, hey, maybe the biblical story is a later version of this more ancient tale. Maybe Eden and Dilmun are the exact same place. So to track down that first missing river, the Pishon, Zarins did something brilliant. He looked at satellite images of the region. And what he found was incredible. A huge, dried-up riverbed, basically a ghost river, snaking its way from the mountains of Saudi Arabia all the way to the Persian Gulf. He was convinced this had to be the lost Pishon, the river that flowed through that legendary land of gold. Now here's the part that just blows my mind. To make his theory work, you have to understand what the climate was like way back when. At the end of the last ice age, maybe 8,000 years ago, so much water was locked up in ice that sea levels were about 200 feet lower than they are today. Let that sink in. That means the Persian Gulf wasn't a gulf at all. It was a lush, dry, fertile valley. Zarins even gave it a name, the Gulf Oasis. So when you look at Zarins' case file, it all just clicks into place. You've got the Tigris and the Euphrates, check. You have that ghost river in Arabia as the Pishon, check. And he identified the Karun River coming out of Iran as the Gihon. And what do you know? All 4 of them would have met right in the middle of that ancient Gulf Oasis. A perfect spot for a garden, right? And then, as the ice caps melted and the seas rose, paradise was simply drowned, buried under what we now call the Persian Gulf. Zarins didn't stop there. He had this really radical take on the whole fall from grace story. He proposed that eating from the tree of knowledge wasn't really about sin. What if it was a metaphor for the discovery of agriculture? Think about it. It could have been this kind of cultural memory, a lament for losing that easy hunter-gatherer lifestyle and starting the back-breaking work of farming. It was a huge technological leap for sure, but one you could never, ever go back from. But okay, not everyone is convinced we should be looking where the rivers end. What if we've got it all backwards? Other investigators argue that Eden must have been at the source of the rivers, the headwaters, and that idea takes our search out of the lowlands and way up into the highlands. So this theory points us to the Armenian highlands. Why there? Well, that's where both the Tigris and the Euphrates get their start. Proponents of this idea say the Gihon is the Araxes River and the Pishon is the Chorik. And you have to admit, there's a really cool narrative appeal here. This same region is home to Mount Ararat, where Noah's Ark supposedly landed, so you'd have humanity's beginning and its rebirth happening in the very same spot. Kind of poetic, right? Now, an archaeologist named David Roll, he took this northern theory and really zoomed in. He pinpointed a specific valley in northwestern Iran, the Aji Chai Valley. And when he looked around, he found that the local place names seemed to match up with the biblical descriptions. The Kushe Dog mountain range sounds a lot like the land of Cush. The nearby Aras River was once called the Gihon, pretty close to Gihon. And there's this massive volcano, Mount Sahand, looming over the valley, a perfect candidate for the Mountain of God. Okay, so up to this point, we've been treating this map like a literal physical guide. But what if it's not? Our next theory is a total game changer. It suggests the clues aren't pointing to a place on a map at all, but to something much bigger, a powerful idea. So what if we're asking the wrong question? A scholar named Francesca Stavrokopoulou comes along and asks something really radical. What if this whole story is a metaphor? What if the Garden of Eden isn't a lost paradise but a symbolic landscape, a code for a real place that had huge political and religious meaning? To get your head around this, first you have to completely rethink Adam. According to this theory, Adam wasn't the first human being. Instead, he was a stand-in, an archetype for the kings of ancient Judah. See, back then, kings were considered God's representative on earth. They were like the chief gardener, whose job it was to take care of the kingdom and maintain divine order. And this is the crucial clue that ties it all together. Remember the Gihon River? Well, guess what the only natural water source for the ancient city of Jerusalem was? The Gihon Spring. That can't be a coincidence, right? It's a direct link both geographically and symbolically between the story of Eden and the capital of these very kings. And once you see that connection, everything else just starts to fall into place. The temple in Jerusalem, it was seen as God's home on earth, and it was filled with garden imagery. The entrance to Eden was guarded by cherubim. And guess what guarded the inner sanctum of the temple? Yep, giant cherubim statues. So in this light, the fall isn't about some ancient sin. It's a political story about the king's failure, his rebellion against Babylon, and getting exiled. The whole Eden narrative becomes this powerful lament for the destruction of the temple, God's house on earth. So where does that leave us? We follow these clues from the bottom of the Persian Gulf up to the mountains of Iran and right into the symbolic heart of Jerusalem. And maybe this search itself is what's really important here. It seems to reveal a much deeper truth about what Eden really means. Let's just recap the suspects. We've got theories pointing to southern Iraq under the Persian Gulf, up in Armenia, and over in northwestern Iran. We have the idea that it's a symbol for the Jerusalem temple. And, believe it or not, the search has gone even wider. The LDS faith, for example, pinpoints Eden's location as Jackson County, Missouri in the United States. People have interpreted this map to point just about everywhere on the globe. And all of this really leaves us with one final massive question. Was the Garden of Eden a real physical paradise that we somehow lost track of? Or is its true power in the story itself? A foundational myth, a powerful metaphor about our relationship with God, with the natural world, and with the consequences of our own actions. Maybe, just maybe, the search for Eden isn't about finding a place on a map. Maybe it's always been about trying to find ourselves.